My girlfriend said it was just wind, but I saw the handprints on the inside of the window. The place we rented was the kind of off-season coastal cottage that looked romantic in listing photos and slightly moldy in person. The agent had left the key in a rusted lockbox and a little welcome note with 2 tea bags taped to it, like a condolence prize. When I pushed the door open, the smell that met us was salt and something flatter. Old paint, damp wood, a lingering stew of a dozen summer families who'd boiled coffee in the same chipped pot. Maya laughed and called it charm, because she liked to win arguments with optimism. I wheeled our bag over floorboards that complained at every ripple of weight and tried to decide if we'd made a mistake or were about to make a memory. "It's just for a long weekend," she said, brushing my arm. She had her hair twisted up and an oversized sweater swallowed her hands, and I wanted to be the kind of boyfriend who could let that be enough of a plan. No Wi-Fi strong enough for anything serious. No news, no deadlines. "We need quiet," she said. The wind came in off the water and answered for me, rattling the back window like someone negotiating a truce, and she smiled. "See? The house agrees." We set groceries on a counter that tilted half a degree, enough to make the oranges drift toward the sink. I put the milk in a fridge that hummed like a square old cat. Maya drifted room to room with the lightness she gets when there's nothing practical to do. I did the practical things. Tested the windows, learned how the lock on the back door had to be coaxed up and then pushed down, bled the radiator in the bedroom when it started ticking like a metronome with anxiety. There was a bookshelf full of the usual abandoned paperbacks, sea captains, thrillers with sunglasses on the cover, and a ceramic bowl of sand dollars on the mantel, like a museum exhibit titled, "You Are at the Shore." Small things were off, but small things are always off in rentals. A teaspoon tucked into the napkin drawer, a nail set too far into the wall where a picture had been, a faint rectangle of clean paint above the sofa like a ghost frame. The back window in the tiny laundry room didn't sit true in its sash, and for a moment when I tried to close it, it stuck and then snapped down with a clap that echoed up the hall. Maya called, "You okay?" in the tone that meant she was already smiling at my answer. I said, "Yeah, the window just needed convincing." "It's just the wind," she said, not hearing me. That was the first time she said it, like something she'd rehearsed. We walked down to the water before sunset, the sky doing its gray-blue watercolor effect. A handful of gulls did their eternal argument over nothing, and a dog with too much bravery went chest-deep after a frisbee, and then regretted everything. Maya took my hand and swung it like we were kids. "Let's not talk about work," she said. "Let's not talk about tasks or what's next. Just nothing." It was easy to agree. Out past the last row of cottages, a lighthouse blinked on and off like an eye deciding whether to stay awake. When the cold got into our sleeves, we headed back. The house looked smaller from the street, like a toy placed carefully beside others just like it. The first weird thing I noticed was missing and stupid: a granola bar. I had bought a 6-pack because I am a man of boring habits, and when I opened the box on the counter, 5 neat rectangles stared up at me with the precision of the factory. I made myself remember that I could have eaten one from the car. Maya was unpacking her sweater into a drawer that protested like it had a sore throat, and I told myself to let it go. The wind did its bone flute impression in the laundry room again, and I jammed a folded flyer into the window gap. "It's just the wind," Maya said from the bedroom, without looking up. We met the neighbor when I took the trash out. He was a tall man with the kind of thinness you get when you've argued with your joints for a long time. "Havel," he said, offering a hand with a faint tremor. The first thing I noticed was the little black square of a doorbell camera fixed to his clapboard, watching our shared path like a blinking insect. He saw me looking at it. "My daughter put it in. Says it makes her feel better." I told her if someone wants to steal my flower pots, they're welcome. His voice had a friendly bluntness. "Place treating you all right?" "Charming," I said, and we both let the word be a joke without laughing. He nodded toward the houses beyond. "Gets noisy sometimes. Not here, just, kids, teenagers, night runners." He shrugged. "Air moves strange around here. You hear something, it's usually the wind telling lies." The way he said it made me feel like I had been added to a conversation that started before I was born. I thanked him, and he told me if we needed extra trash bags, he had a stash in his shed. When I went back in, Maya asked what he'd said. "Nothing," I told her. "Just neighborly things." We cooked pasta for dinner and it came out slightly gummy because the stove's low was a liar. The window fogged over the sink and we traced dumb faces in the condensation and cleaned them off with the edge of a dish towel like we were erasing evidence of a crime that made the room gentler. Later, we read in bed, or pretended to. Maya fell asleep with her book an inch from her face, and I set it on the nightstand. I lay there and listened to the cottage tell me what it was. Every place has its lexicon of sound. This one had the click-click of the radiator deciding to live, the shiver of the old pipes flexing, the wind's teeth combing through the siding. Our bag made the mirror balloon slightly on its string, tapping a hollow metronome against the plaster. I almost slept. A noise pulled me up. Not loud, but wrong. A soft contact against glass from the back of the house. I waited for it again, not moving. Like a kid who thinks if he breathes too loudly the monster will hear. Then, a second tap, like a fingertip softly announcing itself. I got out of bed without switching on the light and padded down the short hall. The laundry room was colder than the rest of the house, and the air had that wet metal scent the sea leaves on anything that stops moving. The window above the dryer had fogged again, though we hadn't cooked for hours. The flyer I'd jammed in the sash was on the floor, and there were handprints on the glass. It wasn't one of those spooky, obvious things like in a movie, exactly. The prints were smudged, half shapes pressed into the moisture from the inside. Not my hands. They were too small, the fingers more narrow. Two of them near the lower corner, overlapping like whoever made them had touched, then hesitated, then touched again. I stared without moving, all my dumb grown-up rationalizations walking themselves out to sea. I touched my own hand to the window beside them. The cold went through my skin like it had a destination. My breath made new fog bloom, and I felt stupid, and something else that felt like vertigo. Ethan? Maya's voice was soft behind me. She was just a shape in the doorway in her sweater, hair down like a curtain. What are you doing? Look, I said. My voice came out hoarse. I stepped aside. She leaned in and saw, and I watched her face decide how to react. It was quick. Half a heartbeat, and then she gave me the smile people give to dogs who've heard fireworks. It's just the wind, she said, gentle as if that softness could unmake the shapes finally, as if language was solvent. She picked up the flyer and wedged it back. This house, it breathes. Old places do. You know that. She hooked her arm into mine and turned me away like the scene behind us was a television we'd both had enough of. Come to bed. You're scaring yourself for sport. I didn't touch it, I said, which was not a useful sentence, but it was all I had. They're on the inside. It's condensation. She kissed my shoulder through the fabric, a cold press of mouth. You draw a hand and it looks like a hand. The glass remembers. She said it like she'd been there before, in this exact conversation. When we lay back down, she slid her foot over mine and anchored it like that could keep me from floating off the bed. It's just the wind, she whispered again. And I thought of the neighbor's camera and the path it watched, and wondered what else it had seen that had been given that same name. Sometime near morning, the house settled into a hush, and I fell under. When light came, a colorless wash, I went back to the laundry room before coffee. The window had dried to boring glass. The flyer had sloped out again. Not much, just enough to make a thin tongue of air find my wrist. I closed it better, a small act of control. In the kitchen, the oranges had rolled back toward the sink, and one had a new soft bruise, as if it had been thumbed and set down. I opened the granola box again like an idiot and counted 5, probably always 5. Maya came in, blinking, sweater sleeves strangling her hands. Hey, she said, reaching for me the way she always did first thing. I kissed her and tasted salt that wasn't mine. Coffee? She asked. I nodded. Her eyes flicked to the hall beyond me and then back. It was a tiny thing, that glance. So quick you could call it a twitch, but I felt it. I filed it next to the handprints and the neighbor's camera and the word wind, humming like a refrigerator behind everything. I didn't say anything about any of it. I told myself I'd let it go. I told myself we were here to be quiet. Outside, the sea did its breathing, and the morning was so thin and gray it looked like it would tear if you tugged it. The second night carried a weight the first one hadn't. Like once the house had tested us, it could now reveal what it really sounded like. I told myself to focus on ordinary things. Coffee grounds in a paper filter, eggs that hissed in the pan, the salt smell from Maya's hair when she leaned in to taste. But my mind kept sliding back to the laundry room window. I went to check it again after breakfast, pretending I was just opening the dryer for clean towels. The glass looked blank, innocent, no more evidence of anything. But the way the flyer sagged out of the sash again made me grit my teeth. Old house, I told myself. Air sneaks through, drafts push things around. But the picture of those handprints lived in me like a photo I couldn't delete. Maya noticed. She always noticed when my silence went sharp instead of soft. Hey, she said, bumping my hip with hers. Stop carrying ghosts around. We came here to be boring together, not to invent mysteries. She poured more coffee and handed me the mug like a bribe. She looked so light, so ordinary that I tried to accept it. We went walking again, farther this time, down the cliff trail where the path narrowed to a single-file ribbon and the ocean punched the rocks far below. The air was knife-cold and loud. Maya walked ahead and pointed out a bird nest tangled in a bush, and I wondered how someone so grounded in caring for small things could look me in the eye and say, "It's just the wind," like it was gospel. That night, after too much pasta and half a bottle of cheap wine, we curled on the sofa under the scratchy rental blanket. The house talked to itself again. Clicks and hisses, the wind playing its instrument. Maya dozed off on my chest. I watched the shadows move on the ceiling until my eyes burned. Eventually, I carried her to bed and lay awake longer than I wanted to admit. Around 2 in the morning, I tried something. A stupid thing. I fetched the plastic tub of baby powder we'd bought by accident at the grocery store. Maya had laughed. We didn't need it, but it was on sale. And I dusted a thin layer along the floor in front of the laundry window, just to prove something to myself. If it was wind, there'd be nothing in the morning. If it was more, I slept badly, tossing in and out, waking at every creak. Somewhere near dawn, a sound reached me again, not the tap this time, but the faintest scrape. I held my breath until silence returned, and then finally slipped into shallow sleep. When I got up, the powder was marked. Not much, not clear, but enough. Curved impressions, narrow, like someone had stepped lightly with small feet. I crouched and stared at them until my knees hurt. My first thought was child. My second thought was impossible. Maya's voice behind me. "What are you doing?" I straightened too fast, guilty as if she'd caught me in a crime. "Just checking the draft." She looked down, saw the powder. Her face changed in a flicker, fear first, then annoyance, then that soft, patronizing smile again. "Really? Flower traps now? Ethan, you're spiraling." She crouched and swiped a hand through the prints, smearing them back into nothing. "Mice," she said firmly. "Or the draft. We're in a century-old house, not a lab." "That's not a mouse," I said, low. "And the window?" "It's the wind." She cut me off, sharp this time, not gentle. She looked at me like she dared me to keep arguing. And I realized then that "it's just the wind" wasn't casual. It was a line she was drawing in the sand. Later, taking trash out again, I lingered at Havel's gate. He was out in his yard fiddling with a rake, and I asked, too casually, "Your camera catch much?" He squinted at me. "Why?" "Just wondering. Sometimes the wind makes weird noises here at night." He let the silence hang. Then he said, "Wind doesn't show up on camera. People do." He tapped the side of his nose as if to say, "Watch, don't talk." Back inside, I tried to shake it off. We made pancakes. We read by the weak afternoon light. We pretended to be vacationers, but my eyes kept snagging on things. A yogurt wrapper in the trash we hadn't bought. A toy-sized scuff on the baseboard near the hall. At one point, I opened the closet in the guest room to hang my jacket and noticed a panel at the back, not flush with the others, just slightly ajar, like a breath held too long. I touched it, but before I could push, Maya called from the kitchen. "Ethan, can you help me with the sink?" Her voice was too fast, too bright. I shut the closet and went to her. She was standing there with wet hands and no real problem, just smiling too wide. That night in bed, I lay stiff while she curled against me. "You're too tense," she murmured. "It's all in your head." "I saw the prints," I whispered. "In the powder. They were—" She pressed her hand over my mouth, gently but firm. "Shh. It's just the wind." Her eyes shone in the dark, wide and unblinking. I didn't sleep much. Every time the house sighed, I imagined someone else breathing inside its walls. The third morning, I couldn't keep pretending. I waited until Maya went into town for groceries, insisting she wanted to surprise me with real breakfast stuff. And the second I heard her car pull away, I went to the guest room. The panel in the back of the closet was right where I'd left it. This time I pulled. It resisted, then gave with a shudder, and behind it was a space I hadn't expected. Narrow, dusty, but lived in. A blanket folded on the floor. A small flashlight. A pair of children's sneakers, soles worn thin. And on the wall, faint crayon marks, stick figures, a blue sun, the outline of a house. In the corner, a shaky sentence. "Shh. It's just the wind." My skin went cold. The phrase had been bouncing off my ears for days, but seeing it written in a child's hand made it something else entirely. I crouched, heart punching my ribs, and picked up a small paperback, its cover bent and worn. It was a kid's book, something about trains, with stickers half peeling from the pages. My stomach dropped. There was no way to explain this away as wind, drafts, mice. Someone had been living here, recently. I took pictures on my phone, every detail. Blanket, sneakers, drawing, the words. My hand shook enough that some came out blurred, but I didn't stop until I had proof. I went outside and knocked on Havel's door. He answered slower this time, as if expecting me. "Yeah? I need to ask you something," I said, holding up my phone. "Your camera, did it catch anything? At night?" He studied me, then beckoned me in. His living room smelled of coffee grounds and dust. He fiddled with the little monitor hooked to his doorbell cam, tapped through clips, and then... There, a shadow, just 2 nights ago. Small, darting across our path toward our porch. Too small to be an adult. I stared. My mouth felt dry. Havel muttered, "You didn't see that from me. My daughter freaks if she thinks I'm showing neighbors anything. But yeah, something's running around." Back in our cottage, I waited for Maya. My pulse raced with a cocktail of anger and dread. When she came through the door, smiling with a carton of eggs, I couldn't help myself. "Tell me what's going on," I demanded. Her smile froze. "What do you mean?" I shoved my phone toward her, thumb swiping through the photos of the closet space. "This? Don't you dare say wind again? Who's been living here? Why are there kids' shoes in the wall?" Her face drained of color. She set the eggs down too hard, one cracking, yolk spreading across the counter. "You shouldn't have gone in there." Her voice was flat. "You knew," I said. My chest was tight, fury fighting with disbelief. "You've been lying to me." She shook her head quickly, eyes shining too much. "It's not lying, it's protecting. You don't understand." "Then make me understand," I snapped. My voice came out harsher than I meant, but I couldn't stop. For a moment she looked like she would cry. Then she pulled herself in, jaw set. "It's not what you think." "Then tell me," I said, quieter now but more dangerous. "Or I go to the police. Tonight." She flinched. "Don't," she whispered. "Please, Ethan, not yet. Just give me one night, and I'll tell you everything. I swear." I stared at her, at the mess of egg on the counter, at her trembling hands. My chest hurt. "One night," I said finally. "That's all you get." Her relief looked like grief. She nodded once, almost a bow. That night in bed, she lay stiff beside me. I couldn't close my eyes. Every sound in the house felt alive. Somewhere in the walls, I thought I heard the faintest shuffle. And when Maya whispered, barely audible, "It's just the wind," I didn't know if she was speaking to me or to someone else. The storm rolled in the next afternoon like the sky had been holding its breath too long. By evening, the windows shook in their frames, the gutters overflowed, and the whole cottage felt like it was bracing itself against something heavier than weather. I'd been pacing since noon, waiting for Maya to keep her promise. She made tea and sat cross-legged on the sofa, watching the rain lash sideways, but she hadn't spoken. When I finally said her name, Sharp, she flinched like I'd snapped her out of something private. "You said tonight," I reminded her. No more excuses, no more wind. For a long moment she didn't move. Then she set her mug down, wrapped both arms around herself and said quietly, "His name is Noah." The words didn't fit at first, like puzzle pieces forced in upside down. "Who?" She stared at the floor. "The child. The one you're so sure is a ghost or a burglar. He's not either. He's 8. He's hiding." I felt my throat tighten. Hiding where? From who? Her eyes flicked toward the guest room. From his father. From the system that was supposed to protect him. From everyone who turned their head. Her voice trembled now, her defenses breaking. "I met him when I was volunteering with a social worker. Sweetest kid, but the reports, bruises, broken bones they called falls. His father's a charmer, you know? Smiles at the right people, talks smooth. They said there wasn't enough evidence. Case closed." "You..." I tried to swallow, but my mouth was dry. "You took him?" "I saved him," she snapped, then caught herself, voice lowering. "Where else could he go? Foster homes shuffle kids like cards. I couldn't watch him disappear, so I brought him here. Just until I figured something out." She shook her head like she'd rehearsed this 1,000 times, always ending in the same desperate justification. I thought of the sneakers, the drawings, the yogurt wrapper. It wasn't some horror movie mystery. It was worse. It was real. "Maya, do you have any idea what you've done? You can't just..." "I know," she cut in, her voice raw. "I know it's insane. But he's safe. Safe for the first time in his life. That's all I wanted. Please, Ethan, don't look at me like I'm a criminal." Lightning split the sky outside. Thunder cracking so close the windows buzzed. The lights flickered, steadied, then flickered again. In the sudden dark pause, I thought I heard it. Faint movement in the vent above. A shuffling, as if someone small had crept closer to listen. I lowered my voice. "Where is he now?" Maya hesitated, then stood and went to the guest room. She slid the closet panel aside. With the storm howling, I almost missed it. A pale face, wide eyes, hair plastered to his forehead. The boy looked like a shadow peeled out of the wall. He didn't speak. Just stared, fingers clutching the edge of the panel like it might close again on him. "It's okay, Noah," Maya whispered. "It's just the wind." The phrase hit me like a slap. I finally understood. It wasn't meant for me. It was for him. A code, a shield, a lullaby against questions. My chest ached. I crouched, careful, and tried to make my voice soft. "Hey, buddy, I'm Ethan. You don't have to be scared." No response. His eyes darted to Maya, then back to me. She shook her head faintly, warning me not to push. Before I could say more, her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it, frowned, picked it up. Her face drained of color. She showed me the screen. A notification from her tracking app. "Unknown AirTag detected moving with you." My stomach dropped. "How long has that been on?" "I don't know," she whispered. "It just popped up." A noise carried through the storm. Metal against gravel, like a car door slamming. We both froze. I moved to the front window, careful behind the curtain. Through the sheets of rain, I saw a figure moving up the drive. Tall, broad, purposeful, not a neighbor, not lost. Maya's voice was barely audible. "It's him!" The lights flickered again and went out completely, leaving only the storm's pulse and our breathing. The boy vanished back into the wall like a ghost, panel clicking shut. Maya gripped my arm so hard her nails bit skin. "We can't let him in," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. Thunder cracked again. The doorknob rattled once, twice, then a heavy knock. The storm howled around us and I realized the real danger wasn't the wind at all. The pounding on the door came again, harder this time, like someone testing not just the lock but our nerve. The storm muffled the edges of sound, but his presence was unmistakable. I motioned for Maya to get back, my pulse loud in my ears. The cottage felt smaller than ever, every creak in the walls amplifying. I grabbed the heavy flashlight from the counter. It was laughable as a weapon, but it was something. "Stay with Noah," I whispered. She shook her head violently, but I shoved her toward the guest room. "Hide with him, now." Another knock, then a voice, muffled but carrying through the storm. "Maya!" The syllables curled, warm, familiar, horrifying. "I know you're in there. You think you can keep him from me? You're wrong." Maya's face went pale. "It's him," she mouthed. I nodded, throat tight. I moved toward the living room window, careful not to let my shadow cross the curtain. Through a slit, I saw him. A tall man in a soaked jacket, hair plastered to his skull, eyes glittering with a fury too practiced to be sudden. In one hand, he held up something. Shiny, small. A key. He must have gotten it from the rental company. My chest squeezed. I darted back to the kitchen, heart hammering. "He's got a key!" I hissed to Maya. Her hands flew to her mouth. "What do we do?" I thought fast. The powder trick, the handprints. I knew about misdirection now. "Take Noah and go into the wall. Stay silent. Don't move unless I call you." She looked like she wanted to argue, but the next rattle of the doorknob shut her up. She disappeared into the guest room, panel sliding closed behind her. I was alone. The key turned in the lock. The door pushed, but I had already thrown the chain across. It held. The man cursed, then pounded the frame. "You don't know what you're doing, Ethan. She's lying to you. That boy is mine." I swallowed hard, forcing calm. "You need to leave," I called, voice steady somehow. "Police are on their way." He laughed. Even through the storm, it sounded sharp. "Police don't care. They never do. She stole him, and you're harboring a kidnapper." The words scraped me raw. Was there truth? Doubt licked at me. Poisonous. But then I remembered the drawings. The bruises Maya described, the fear in Noah's eyes. That wasn't staged. That wasn't fiction. I grabbed the jug of water from the counter and splashed it across the laundry room floor, making it slick. Then I pulled the loose flyer from the window gap and let the storm push it open an inch. Air whistling like a false trail. A crash. Glass breaking at the back. He was inside. I crouched low, moving toward the hall. He stepped in through the laundry, boots sliding slightly on the wet tile, exactly as I'd hoped. I darted past the doorway, banging the closet door in the hall, luring him. "Come out, Maya!" His voice was ragged now, angrier. "You can't hide him from me. He's mine." I slipped into the dark storage room off the hall, crouching. The storm's roar covered my breath. His shadow passed, broad against the faint lightning through the windows. He headed deeper, toward the guest room. My stomach flipped. He was close to the panel. I hurled the flashlight down the hall. It clattered loud, bouncing into the kitchen. He spun toward the noise instantly, cursing. I lunged. Not brave, not smart. Instinct. I slammed into him shoulder first, driving him into the wall. He staggered, swung back with his elbow, catching my ribs hard enough to knock the wind out of me. Pain flared white. I fell, gasping. He loomed over me, eyes wild. "You think you can stop me?" But before he could strike again, another voice cut through, the metallic rasp of Havel's doorbell camera speaker. "I've called the cops," the neighbor barked. "They're already on their way. You step outside, you'll see my lights on you." The man hesitated, snarling. The storm rattled the walls, lightning flooding the hall. He turned, bolting toward the front. He tried the door, cursed at the chain, then kicked it until it splintered. He stumbled out into the rain. I dragged myself up, clutching my ribs. Maya emerged from the panel with Noah clinging to her like a shadow. She looked at me, wide-eyed. "Is it over?" Blue and red lights cut through the storm just then. Sirens distant but closing. I shook my head, breathless. Not yet, but almost. We stood there, the three of us. The wind shrieking around the cottage like it was mocking every lie it had carried until now. The storm didn't let up until morning. And by then, the house looked like it had aged 20 years overnight. Shingles scattered across the lawn. The front door half splintered where the chain had given. Puddles seeping into the warped floorboards. I sat on the sofa with an ice pack on my ribs, listening to the ocean still roaring in the distance. The police had taken him away in cuffs, though not before he turned and spat words at me that still rang in my head. You don't know what she's hiding from you. I wanted to believe it was just venom, a desperate jab, but it sank its hook in me anyway. Maya sat across from me. Noah curled against her side, his head finally heavy with sleep. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. Her sweater damp and stretched, her eyes rimmed in red. They'll open a case, she said hoarsely. Child services will come. I'll probably be charged. I don't know what happens after that. I wanted to comfort her. Part of me wanted to rage. Instead, I just asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" Her fingers traced idle circles in Noah's hair. Because you'd tell me to stop. Because you'd remind me of the rules. And you'd be right, but right wasn't enough. He was hurting him, Ethan. I couldn't watch it happen again. She looked up and for a moment her eyes held that same fire I'd seen when she first told me about the boy. I didn't want you to see me as a criminal before you saw why. The knock on the door mid-morning was soft, hesitant. A woman in a dark coat introduced herself as a caseworker. She spoke kindly, but her eyes were clinical, cataloging everything. The blanket nest in the closet, the food wrappers, Noah's silence. Papers were signed. Questions asked. When she led him toward the waiting car, he clutched Maya's sleeve until his knuckles went white. "It's okay," she whispered, forcing her voice to stay steady. "It's just the wind." He let go. After they drove off, the house felt cavernous. Maya and I packed in silence. My phone buzzed with emails I ignored. Havel came over, set a hand on my shoulder, muttered, "You did what you could," then went back to his own wreck of a porch. His camera had caught everything, and the police had taken the footage. Evidence. Proof. By evening, we were ready to leave. I walked through one last time, shutting windows, gathering stray belongings. In the laundry room, I paused. The glass was fogged again from the storm's leftover damp. 2 small handprints pressed there, side by side, and in the center, traced by a fingertip. "Thank you." My chest tightened. I wiped my sleeve across the glass, but it didn't erase easily. The marks clung, faint outlines refusing to fade. Behind me, Maya's voice was tired, hollow. "Ready?" I nodded, though my throat felt too tight for words. We closed the door on the cottage, turned in the key to a lockbox that suddenly seemed cruelly ironic. The drive out was quiet, the storm clouds breaking apart in tatters of pale blue. Weeks later, I testified. I showed the photos. The video Havel had provided. The charges against her father held this time. No charm could erase bruises. No smile could undo the footage of him breaking into the house. Noah was placed in a foster home that looked, on paper, safe. Maya was sentenced to community service, stripped from her volunteer work, given a record she'd carry forever. She took it quietly, like punishment was a price she'd always expected. We stayed together technically, but something fragile had cracked. I couldn't stop seeing the way she'd lied, even if it was for him. She couldn't stop seeing the way I'd threatened to call the police on her. Love doesn't erase those kinds of fractures. It just grows around them, awkward, aching. Months later, when we finally packed boxes and divided books, I found one thing I couldn't give back, the little train paperback with the stickers. I kept it, though I never told her. Some nights, when the wind rattles my apartment windows, I hear it again. Her whisper, Noah's silence, the storm howling like it carried all our secrets. I stand there, staring at the glass until it fogs, waiting for the faint press of a hand that isn't mine. And when my chest clenches too tight to bear, I whisper it back into the empty room. Not sure if it's a comfort or a curse. It's just the wind.